We are now on air. Time for a total takeover.
It's finally here. Welcome to a new episode.
It's about to go down.
First and foremost, giving honor to God and to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for allowing me to see another day. This is the Dan Adams Show, and it is Monday, I believe July 11th. Don't even know what the date is, but I believe that's the date. And been completely out of pocket politically this weekend, so I'm not even going to try and delve into what's been going on. But I am going to go on my soapbox / bully pulpit on a couple of just, life topics. And the first topic I want to talk about is family dynamics. Now, for those of you who still have your parents amongst the living, and you may be having some issues with said parents. Now, granted, you love your parents, but there may be some strain in your relationship because of politics, that you don't even want to talk or converse or have a normal relationship with your parent. Boy, what I wouldn't give to have my parents alive today. My mom and dad passed away back in 2005. Wow, I can't believe it's been that long. And what I wouldn't give right now to have a conversation with my mom or my dad. And granted, especially with my dad, we had our differences, but I didn't let any of those differences get in the way with my relationship with him. And right before he passed, our relationship was the best it had ever been in our lives. And excuse me for the tunnel and the knocking down of the phone. I don't know what happened here. It's not tight. But anyway, so as I was saying, when my dad passed in March of 2005, our relationship was the best it was, period. And me and my mom, and for those who know me and my mom and the relationship I had with my mom, and me and my mom were like this. And what I wouldn't give to have a conversation with my mom today and just get her take on what's going on in life, with life surrounding us and things of that nature. So this is more of a plea to any of you out there who may have some issues with your parents. That's just completely minuscule and minute in the grand scheme of things. Work it out. Life is too short. Life is too damn short. All right. Let's move on from family dynamics to family household business. And what I mean is, when stuff goes on in your house, that's house business, as we say. None of that should ever leak out to anyone else but within your household. And that's how it is in my household. Not sure how it is in your household. But family business is family business. So, for any of you youngins out there who think that it's okay to put family business on blast on social media, stop it. I'm slapping your hand. Stop it. And speaking of social media and the youngins, realize this, young ladies and gentlemen out there, and the stuff that you're posting on social media. And as you're getting older, and then you may be going to college, or you may be going into the workforce, be cognizant of what you put online. Because do not think that employers of today are not going out on social media and checking out who you are, what you do, what you're about, and what you post on social media. Because this is, from what I understand, and from the HR individuals that I know, it may not be the ultimate contributing factor for you getting hired, but it's a contributing factor in the overall scheme of you getting hired or not. So think about that. Think about the representation of you. Is this who you are as a whole? Because no one knows you except for what you post online. So the young ladies out there doing the TikTok stuff and wearing the skimpy stuff and all that good stuff, is that the full representation of you? So you can't post anything. Like, if you got siblings, younger siblings that you hang out with and do stuff with, you can't post videos on that, or you can't post videos of hanging out with your family, or you can't post just normal stuff. Think about that. And think about how the employment aspects of your upcoming life can be affected by what you post online. Just think about that. Now, I want to go ahead and move on to one final topic and subject, and the video blitz for today will begin. I want to talk about my musical aspirations, and I'm going to put it in the description of today's video. But I'm asking for a favor, ladies and gentlemen. Asking for a huge favor. You have a YouTube channel. Will you please go and subscribe to my band, Big Fat Mallard's YouTube page? We need to get to a certain amount of subscribers so we can change our YouTube page to Big Fat Mallard so it can be easy for it to find. But in the description section of this video, please subscribe to my band, Big Fat Mallard's YouTube page. That would be greatly, greatly appreciated. So, as you go about your day, and as I'm trying to make this right onto this bridge, and this is the Duquesne McKeesport Bridge for those who live here in Pittsburgh, and I'm headed to the 9 to 5, if you didn't know. And I'm in the Blueberry today. Got the Blueberry, the Political Heat Remote Studio. But as you go about your day, may God continue to bless you and yours. May He keep you and your family safe. Until then, until next time, until we meet again, peace.
I have thoughts. I have thoughts and I have questions. And it happened. It happened. I woke up from a nap to this. On deployment. I woke up from a nap to this news. America is waking up to this news. I just extended my contract to continue serving this country a week ago. How am I supposed to swear to support and defend the Constitution and a country that treats its women like second-class citizens? How am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to do that with pride? How am I supposed to do that with love and honor? How am I supposed to wake up every day and put on a freaking uniform that says United States Army when the United States doesn't even give a rat's ass about me? It gives more of a rat's ass about the guns they're allowed to buy that kill the children that I'm forced to give birth to. Think about that. Oh, that's so funny. This effect on female servicewomen is an unintended consequence, which means that lawmakers and Supreme Court justices probably weren't thinking about this when they wrote their 213 some odd page report on it, right? They probably were not thinking about this consequence, but it is one. And it affects the very people that those lawmakers hold to a higher standard because they support the troops. Do you really, though? You really support the troops, even though this is going to greatly lessen the retention of women in the ranks of this military? You support the troops, even though you are going to ruin some women's careers? I'm deployed right now. And I am a medic, so I know how this works of like, I have an extremely limited access to birth control. Women in the military are more likely to experience unplanned pregnancies. Women in the military are more likely to experience sexual assault. Where I'm at right now, you can't even get an ultrasound without traveling off base. You can't. It happened. It happened, ladies and gentlemen. And I signed that contract, so I will serve my country. But you bet your ass you're going to hear my voice, because I will not stop, I will not rest, and I will not be silent, because this is not an attack on reproductive rights. It is an attack on women in this country. 100%.
That was a baby. That was a baby with its own. Listen, you might not like me. No, that was a baby. Let me tell you something. What you ended was a unique genetic code that had eye color, hair color, how tall it would be, how much it would weigh, its personality, proclivity toward mental illness, what kind of hair pattern to male pattern baldness. When you had that abortion performed, you eliminated all of that. That's a scientific fact.
Of all the Change My Mind segments we've conducted, this one became the most intensely personal.
Hi, how are you?
Meet Yara.
I'm really trying not to. People were hyping my nerves in there.
Oh, really? What's your name?
Yara.
Yara Steven, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, Yara. So you just...
Before this, I just want to say no personal offense to either one of us.
I appreciate
respect
that.
Your opinion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I know you just said you have to calm yourself down because people were hyping your nerves.
I do. I need to calm down for a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you need? You were hoping there was some.
Water.
It's the legality of we can't necessarily give people water because then they go, I got salmonella, and then they point to me.
Yeah,
it's a
that's
YouTube
fine.
channel. So you seem like you're upset. Obviously, the sign is pretty clear. I'm pro-life. You've been listening to some conversations. If you disagree with my position, you're welcome to change my mind. But you still need to calm your nerves. What are you so upset about?
One thing that definitely really strikes a chord with me is the fact that a majority of women who have actually had to face the choice of abortion, it is because it was either necessary, it was medically necessary, or it was just a decision that really was the fork in the road of your future. Mm-hmm. And from my understanding, a majority of men, I understand they pay child support. I understand that a man is half what it takes to create a child.
Sure.
But when you are by yourself and you are alone and it is dark and you have to face, do I lose my future? Do I throw away my education? Mm-hmm. I can go back. Yeah, you always say I can go back, but that's twice as hard raising a child by yourself. I watched my mom as a single mother, and I don't want that life for myself. And abortion itself, it's a right. I understand the legalities behind late abortion, and I do not support it unless it is medically necessary.
Okay.
In the terms of it would kill the mother, the fetus is no longer viable.
Can I pause you real quick? Just because you've gone to a few different things.
Yes.
First off, I appreciate you being so forthcoming with your personal story. You didn't have to do that, so I do appreciate that.
I understand a lot of people are not willing to talk about it.
Well, thank you very much. So here, let me present you this bill, because it sounds like we might find some common ground here. This is a bill proposed for babies who survive abortions.
In terms, what term were they aborted? At what point?
Well, no, this is about all babies who survive abortions, whether it be later term
you
or...
You have to ask, what point are these children surviving these abortions?
You can read it right here. What it basically requires is that doctors simply provide the same kind of medical care to born babies from survived abortions as born babies who didn't survive attempted abortions. Every major DNC candidate voted against that protection. What would you say to that? Does that make it moral?
No, that's not in the sense of moralities when it comes to having the abortion in general. You're talking about saving a child who did actually survive.
Survive an abortion, yeah.
In that point, yeah, you do have that common ground. Mm-hmm. But what we're talking about today is the initial access of abortions and women who need them.
Sure.
Because
you've not convinced me that women need them. Certainly, they don't need them. They don't need to kill another human being.
You may not feel like they need them, but you know what? I'm prospering. I'm actually out here, I'm creating a life for myself, and I'm hoping to make a future for myself, and other women are on the same page as I am.
Are you saying that you've had an abortion? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not going to say that publicly, because
okay, well, you
that's
just came out here and
business.
said you just said I'm prospering, you just brought up abortion, so I'm confused as to the train of logic. Why does that matter?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
You know what? I had to sit in that chair, and I had to face the facts that yes, what I was doing was something that was going to change my future, and it did. Yeah. Because I was left alone. I was left to pay for everything. I did not qualify for any kind of funding or payments that people say exist. And everybody who wants to say I would have adopted your baby, I'm sorry, but go adopt the other 4,000 that are already in foster care programs here. And you can't tell me...
Just because not everyone here would adopt that baby doesn't mean it's justifiably killed.
It doesn't mean that it was justifiably meant to force me to have a baby.
No one's forcing you to have a baby.
You would if you took away the law.
No one would be forcing you to have a baby. It would simply be forbidding you from killing it.
No, you would be forcing...
No one's forcing you to have a baby. The only forcible act there is the act of killing.
How many single women, how many single parents who are women are in poverty? Do you know the percentage?
It could not be less relevant.
How is that less relevant? Because I'm going to tell you from a perspective of
Well, you just asked me, but then you said I'm going to tell you. Did you want to ask me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know the percentage?
It could not be less relevant because you're not justified in killing somebody based on poverty, income, race, sex, gender, period. It's never justified.
That's hilarious because a lot of our politicians have justifiably killed other people for less.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't speak for all politicians, but to go to your argument, I don't believe you're justified in killing someone because of a lower income level.
I feel like I'm justified in saving myself from having to be forced into that lower income level just because I don't have the accesses of other women who are able to have a husband to support them, have the ability to pay the $15,000+ in medical bills.
Because like I said, it's hard to go back. It's hard to go back when you have a baby. Like you talk about going back to school, it's really hard to go back.
Yeah, it's hard to get educated. It's hard to even support yourself. It's hard to breathe right now as it is.
It's hard to go back in time and unring that bell.
Single person.
Yeah. That baby doesn't get to go back.
That baby was never alive
because
it wasn't viable until it's outside of the womb. And we want to go back to technicalities.
That was a baby with its own. Listen, you might not like this. No, that was a baby. Let me tell you something. What you ended was a unique genetic code that had eye color, hair color, how tall it would be, how much it would weigh, its personality, proclivity toward mental illness, what kind of hair pattern to male pattern baldness. When you had that abortion performed, you eliminated all of that. That's a scientific fact.
The fact is that it was a choice and it was something that had to be done.
I think you handled yourself very well. And again, this is not even to speak of our disagreements. I think that's why people had a very passionate response. And I know you said it's been a whirlwind. What would you say the overall response has been? Because I've tried to direct my fans, my followers, to be respectful. And I've seen that, in my experience, from my point of view, be the majority of it. Has that been the case?
It really depends on what platform you're looking at or what social media you're looking at. Because when I contacted you, I made a Twitter. I'd never really had a Twitter. So I was like, okay, well, maybe if I just kind of get ahead of it and say my small little piece that I can in the little amount of words that Twitter allows you, maybe it'll kind of help me a little, I guess. And Twitter was very positive. I had a couple sour apples, nobody that I can't handle, something that I expected. However, I did feel more judgment on, I guess, YouTube and Facebook.
Sure.
I can understand people don't agree with what I did and some of the points that I did bring up. And having done more research, the conversation itself actually did impact my perspective of the entire conversation.
How so?
Well, in a sense, I gathered that what people had assumed of me was that I did not regret my decision, that I was using it as contraceptive, and that, I was this bad person overall because I was wrong in my form of justification. It made me realize that, yes, I do regret the decision. It's, personally, I didn't get to say this. It's not something I would do again, I didn't get the chance to say that I felt as though I squandered my opportunity in what you would call motherhood. And, I had felt justified in what I had done, but having the conversation kind of made me question my motives, question, did I actually, take advantage of all the opportunities that were available? But it even also made me want to ask myself, why? Like, why other women feel the way that I feel as well. You know, what are those external forces that guided my decision, and how many people feel that same way? So, you know, yeah, I agree. It's not very moral.
What you're sort of explaining here is the intended goal of the segment, but we often don't get to follow up with people, and so it goes out kind of into the ether, and we hope that it works.
Liberal leaders being accused of making self-defense a crime. New York City store worker Jose Alba is back home after his bail was lowered, but is still facing a murder charge. Video showing the altercation with Alba stabbing a man after being confronted behind the counter and shoved into a wall. Crime is up overall in the city, and the NYPD commissioner thinks repeated offenders could be to blame.
We do see a number of people that we are rearresting for the same offenses over and over again. Grand larcenies, in many instances, they're either car thefts. We also have shopliftings or multiple shopliftings, and that basically that will turn into a robbery if it escalates into a robbery. And we're seeing the same people over and over again.
The spotlight on Jose Alba's case putting pressure on liberal leaders to act. New York City Mayor Adams blaming extreme ideologies for the public safety crisis.
There's two battles that are happening in our country and our city right now. You have the far right that states give everyone a gun, no matter what. You have the far left that states everyone that uses a gun should not be held accountable. These two groups are not the majority of Americans, and they have actually held our country and our city hostage. These two groups don't realize they're co-conspirators to the public safety crises that we're facing in our city and country.
So, Judge, I'm going to go to you first on this. In terms of the case, Jose Alba's case, the bodega worker, what do you think his odds are at winning this as a self-defense case?
Good to excellent.
Great.
Good to excellent. In fact, I think if they put it in the grand jury may say there isn't probable cause for an indictment in this case. Look, what you've got is a gang-banging career criminal, several state prison stints, who comes in, his girlfriend tried to use a debit card that didn't work. She calls her boyfriend. He comes in, starts yelling, jumps over the counter, knocks the owner over. The owner is doesn't have a record, and then pushes him. And then he picks him up, and then he pushes him again. And when he pulls him to take him out of there, that's when the guy who owns a bodega grabs the knife to defend himself. He doesn't know where he's going at that point. And the unfortunate part of all of this is, look, you've got a guy who was confronted with a gun here, the bodega owner, several months earlier. So he knows that, people who come in seriously. But I got to say one more thing before you move on. I'll be very quick. I got to tell you, the more I hear this guy Adams, the less I like the guy.
Absolutely.
Okay? What is this? We've got co-conspirators. If anybody's a co-conspirator, you are. The reason that the mayor is a co-conspirator here, he's blaming it on the left and he's blaming it on the right. It's your fault. It's your city. You're a cop. You knew when you ran, you promised that you were going to take care of gun crimes and murders, and you haven't done a damn thing. You won't go after Governor Hochul, who's running for office, and cash this bail, get her to repeal it. You won't do it with Heastie or with Andrea Stewart's cousins in Albany. You ought to go to every homicide in this city and hold a sign up and say, because of cashless bail, this murder happened. And I won't go on.
Joey, I heard you get it.
Yeah, two things here. Number one, the gruesomeness of being stabbed to death could be prevented with a gun. That's a much more humane way to defend yourself. All right, that's number one. Number two, if the gun laws weren't so ridiculous that a shop owner in a city prone to violence can't have a shotgun to defend himself easily, brandishing that shotgun might have had that dude turn around and run the other way. And so it's a deterrent in a lot of ways. The fact is, you're going to see more of this because people are not going to put up with lawlessness. They're not going to be put up with having their own lives threatened for simply running a business. They're not going to put up with a class of Americans who think they can impose their will on what they perceive to be the weak because there's no consequence. And how many people need to needlessly die at knife point before DAs start prosecuting people, putting them in jail for smaller crimes? I mean, who could have saved that man's life? Whoever let him out of jail could have saved his life by keeping him in jail. He wouldn't have been on the streets to perform the next act of violence, because obviously slapping someone in the hand and saying, you know what, you've had rough breaks in life, you shouldn't be put in this position, we're going to let you back out, that doesn't work. That doesn't prevent crime. But it will get you killed if you walk into a bodega and threaten somebody's life. That'll get you killed.
Well, Greg, something that we've been talking about is the kind of dumb moment about, yes, these are people who you're returning to the streets. And that's what the commissioner was acknowledging there. And I'd love your thoughts on that. And also the point that it was actually the public that got this guy out on bail, because there was such public outcry in defense of Jose Alba that they lowered the bail to a reasonable amount that he could actually get himself out of there. So do you see more of a role for people like us in making sure that justice is served?
Yeah, as much as I despise Jesse Waters, makes me sick to my stomach. The fact that he gets to take Fridays off because his back hurts when what is he doing? He's sitting while we're here yelling and screaming. He's off having a margarita. But yesterday, he was the one that said that, he said, so I got to give him credit that we have to stay on this and get this guy out. Yeah. And I think a lot of people watch that. We're the #1 show in history, I believe, of all television shows. You might want to fact check that, but I do believe that we are the #1 show in history. And he said that, he said we have to keep on this, and lo and behold, you have it on the New York Post. But this is you think about this. This is the thing that in an alternative universe it will infuriate you. What if there was no tape?
Exactly.
They would have taken the stabbed suspect. He would be a martyr. Yeah. There would be a mural. There would be a march. There would be riots. And the bodega worker would be portrayed as a monster.
As a racist.
Yes. But thankfully, this is why, I am now so pro surveillance, body cam, put it everywhere. Because if you didn't see this, you know exactly the kind of narrative. You know what happened? Biden would have spoke out against this bodega guy. He would have said, that bodega guy, he's got to pay. Look what he did to this innocent, this poor, he was just getting his life back together. And he gets stabbed by a monster.
Right. Katie, love to get your thoughts before.
The idea that there was bail at all for Jose Alba is atrocious, given the kind of criminals they let out with no bail. And the fact that he's being charged at all in the situation when there is video is absolutely ridiculous, and it will make his life much harder in the future. Most people, especially people working in crime-ridden areas like New York City, would rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. Yeah. And it's a lot easier to do that when you live in an area where you're allowed to defend yourself with a firearm. And so for Mayor Adams to come out in support of this bodega worker, good thing, but he has done nothing to offer any kind of deterrence to these criminals who aren't afraid of the system. They're not afraid of the cops. They're not afraid of the prosecutors, obviously, because they're running back through the system, as that police officer was saying. So the only thing they're going to be afraid of is self-defense. And the mayor of New York City is preventing people from being allowed to defend their own lives from people who walk in and know that there will be no consequences for them, because the mayor and everybody else are on the side, not of the bodega workers trying to make an honest living, but the criminals in the city who are running the show.
They do overcharge on potato chips, though. Let's be clear.
Well, no. They deserved it. Stay right there. We have breaking news about Elon Musk's Twitter deal next.
I voted for Biden back in 2020, and I seriously regret it.
In 2020, I voted for Joe Biden, and I now see that as a mistake.
I voted for Biden in 2020, and I definitely regret voting for him. I will not do it again.
Folks, the people of this nation have spoken. They've delivered us a clear victory.
Growing up, I thought that Democrats were for everybody, especially, like I said, specifically for Black people. And I kind of had that, I was programmed in a sense with that Democratic, savior type of situation. Going into, the 2020 election, I was all for Biden. That's who I voted for. I was like, okay, Biden's gonna have change. He's for everyone. And I was underneath the impression that he was going to do what he was gonna say he was gonna do, and not be lying. I just found out the hard way, unfortunately, that Biden isn't who he says he is, and that it seems like Democrats, in a sense, they just want to keep us in the same spot, in the same place, more so dependent on them, dependent on the government. And I just feel like as a whole, we're just stagnant. Black people were kind of trapped in the vicious cycle of believing what Democrats tell us. And that's what I was for my whole entire life. I believed everything they told me. I believed they're going to make things better. And if you look at the track record of history, they really haven't. They haven't done anything for us, for anybody really.
I started noticing that I made a huge mistake voting for Biden really just a couple of months after Biden took office. And it was a combination of a number of things. Part of it was just the handling of the pandemic. It was the handling of the economy. It's inflation. It's because I voted for someone who's essentially furthering Marxist ideas in our country that I regret voting for him. I mean, it really was a terrible choice. I'm inclined to think that there are still Democrats who believe in who believe in agency and autonomy of the individual. I think that, but I think a lot of the party has been taken over and appropriated by Marxist, and that's not a controversial thing to say. Just simply, a person simply has to look at the policies. A person simply has to, read Paulo Freire or Herbert Marcuse, and then see all of the academic papers coming out of ed schools that cite those two Marxist scholars.
So back in 2020, it was the first time I ever actually decided to vote, and I did vote for Joe Biden because of all the promises he had made. His main point was he's going to help the poor people, but and that the stimulus check. But we didn't get the full stimulus check that he had promised us. He didn't keep any of his promises. He's not helping the poor. The poor are getting poorer. I'm the poor, and I'm getting poorer, so I can barely afford to eat. Groceries are expensive. Gas is expensive. Like, how is gas $5 a gallon? Couch surf right now. I kind of stay with my boyfriend and his mom. My son lives with my parents. Like, I don't want my son to have like a homeless mom, you know? But it seems like everyone's gonna be homeless soon. Like, it's so scary where the world is going. And it makes me seem like, what kind of future do our kids have?
I used to be a Biden supporter. I'm definitely not a Biden supporter anymore. I was anti-Trump. I thought he was a horrible person. I found out completely false. You know, I believed that he was racist, he was a sexist, you know, a womanizer, just all these terrible things, just from the news and media lying on him.
I feel like I had been lied to by the media, telling us Biden's the answer to all the country's problems. Like, that's what I saw him as when I voted for him. And they made Trump kind of the bad guy in the media. But things were a lot better when he was president.
I cannot see any reason why I would be voting Democrat in the next election. As far as looking at 2024, I'm hoping DeSantis runs, and he will have my vote. If Trump runs again and wins the primary, he will have my vote as well.
I would actually, you know, I could see myself definitely voting for Trump if he were to run.
I won't be voting for Biden again. That's for sure.
Democrats like to say that no one needs an AR-15 for self-defense, that no one could possibly need all 30 rounds. But when this rifle is the only thing standing between your family and a dozen angry Democrats in Klan hoods, you just might need that semi-automatic and all 30 rounds.
Well, given the huge public interest around this case involving the former Deputy Senate President Ike Ekweremadu and his wife Beatrice, there were no surprises that Westminster Magistrates Court was absolutely full of individuals that had specifically flown in from Nigeria to show the senator some support. And of course, there are Nigerians within the British community that have a keen interest in the trial too. Two big outcomes from today's hearing. Just when the magistrate was to dismiss the court, the defence lawyers representing the Ekweremadus produced this piece of evidence that had been accepted by the prosecution, which is that this individual is not a minor. It appears as if the information that had been gathered by the senator's defence team in Nigeria had reached London in time for this hearing today, and it was accepted. But that doesn't mean that this case isn't indeed serious. Due to the huge public interest, the magistrate did ask the prosecution to go through the details. I won't go through them now because, of course, many of us will be aware of them, but this does involve organ harvesting and modern slavery. And now the case was adjourned until the 4th of August. This will now be heard at the Central Criminal Court, and both defendants were remanded into custody. I think one of the sticking issues from last week's appearance at Uxbridge Magistrates Court was jurisdiction, but that was cleared up pretty quickly. According to the prosecution, the Attorney General did not have to consent to whether or not this case could proceed in London, and it appears as if that is the case. So just to confirm, the former Deputy Senate President Ike Ekweremadu and his wife Beatrice have today in London been remanded into custody yet again, and they are due to appear in front of a judge at the Central Criminal Court on the 4th of August. Juliana Olayinka reporting for Channels TV News in London.
I felt like I was just about to start moving and get going, like just start paddling again, and then all of a sudden I don't know, I just had this instinct that someone was behind me, and then all of a sudden I felt it started getting pulled underwater, and then the thing came up and I was on my board, and it was like right there. I saw the whole thing just thrashing around, but I was getting dragged under by my leg rope, and then I felt like it kicked me off, but then it was still there going, and I was still attached to my board, and I felt like I punched it a couple of times, and then it was dragging me. I felt like it was just dragging me underwater, and then all of a sudden my leg rope broke, and I was like, all right, just start swimming. I was swimming and screaming. Mate, I'm happy to not even compete ever again. Like, seriously, like to walk away from that, I'm just so stoked. And oh man,